Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to show you my favourite formula in Excel, the Sumifs function. I use this formula most when building spreadsheets with automation in mind. We're going to go step by step on how to type out the formula and then learn how to apply 8 different types of criteria. We'll start simple with one single condition and gradually build up to 3 conditions. As always, we'll begin with the basics and work our way towards something more advanced. Let's jump in and get started. In this first example, in cell H5, we are going to total column C to return all the turnover but only 4 marker pens. We need to type out the Sumifs formula. We're going to start with equals Sumifs. We're going to go from C3 to C29. We're going to put comma. So that first part of the formula is what we're going to total. And you will always start with your numerical addition. This here is highlighted in blue. Then we press a comma. Once we press a comma, it'll move on to the second part, which is the criteria range. The criteria range here is in column B. So we're going to select the same range, but in the B column. We're going to go from B3 to B29. And that is our criteria range. And we press a comma to move on to the final part of our formula. And in here, we're going to enter speech marks and type the word marker. We're going to close with speech marks and then finally close with a bracket. When we press enter, that will return in this cell the total turnover from marker pens. Now we're on to example number 2. We're going to redo the Sumifs formula. We're going to select the sum range, which is in column C. We're then going to select the criteria range in column B. But when we move on to the third part of this formula, we're going to choose a different criteria. This time we're going to use what's known as a cell reference for the criteria, and how we're going to select that is we're going to use the word ballpoint that's inside of cell F10. When we select that and close that with a bracket, that has returned total turnover for ballpoint pens. Example number 3, we're going to type the Sumifs formula. We're going to total column C again, the turnover. This time we're going to select column A, product code for our criteria range. Our criteria for this range is going to be the number 111, which is the product code that relates to ballpoint pens. As we are using a numerical reference for our criteria range 1, we do not need to add in speech marks. We only need to do that for words and other criteria range. When you have a numerical code, you can just type the number in and close it with a bracket and press enter, and that will return the value. In this example, we're going to have a look at using the Sumifs formula, using the criteria range of pen type, and using a cell's reference as the criteria. So when we typed out the Sumifs and we've totaled up column C and we've used column B for our criteria range, now we're going to select for our cell reference. We're going to use this cell here in column E. We start with the ballpoint and we would enter our closing bracket. And what we're going to do is copy this formula down and see how it reacts. As you can see, when you repopulate the cells here, that the actual ranges for the cells have moved. So if every time you copy this formula down, it will move the range down one cell at a time. So what do we need to do to fix this? So what we need to use is the $ to lock the cells. What I'm going to do is delete them here, and let's go back to the original formula. We're going to go up into the formula bar. I'm going to use F4 key next to each cell reference. When using the F4 key, we only need to put the $ next to the ranges, so we need to think about the sum range and the criteria range. We want to keep the criteria where it is because we want it to move with the formula. In this section, we're going to have a look at some of the different criteria. So we've got the equal to, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. This is where sometimes people get stuck because with these symbols you also need to include the speech marks. So let's jump into these examples. For the first one, we need to do a Sumifs formula to total up the turnover. We're going to use column C as the criteria, and we only want to return values with a sell price equal to 75p. So we're going to start with the equals, the Sumif. We're going to add up column D from D3 to 29 and C from C3 to C29. We're going to move on to the criteria range 1, where we'll start with the open speech marks equals speech marks, followed by the ampersand, 0.75 for the 75p. That has returned the value. If we have a look back at the cell, we can see what that's done. Let's move on to the next example. We're going to do the same Sumifs formula. We're going to total the turnover again in column D, then the criteria range in column C. Then we need to add the speech marks, and we're going to use the less than symbol, and followed by the speech marks. The ampersand is next. We're going to type in 2 here, and then we're going to end that with a close the bracket off, and that's return the value. And the next one is for more than, so we're going to type in the Sumifs formula here. We're going to total up column D for turnover, then we're going to select column C for our range, and then we're going to put a comma here. Then we're going to open the speech marks and the greater than symbol, followed by speech marks and then 2.00, and we're going to close that with a bracket, and that's returned that value. The next one we're going to do equals Sumifs. We're going to add up column D again for turnover. This time we are going to select column A for our criteria range. After the comma, we've got the speech marks, we've got the greater than symbol and the equals, followed by speech marks, followed by the ampersand, and then finally J14 to return the date range that we need. And for our last example, we're going to do the Sumifs formula again into the turnover column D. Do that range. The second criteria range is going to be column A, followed by our open speech marks, less than, followed by equals, followed by speech marks, and then the ampersand, and then we're going to select J15 for the day range that we need. We are now on to the 2 criteria range section of the workbook. From this point, we are going to be picking up 2 criteria. So in order to do 2 criteria, we need 2 criteria ranges. As with all Sumifs, the first section will always be what we need to sum. It will then be followed by a criteria range and the criteria selection for that range, and then the next will be followed by another criteria range and the selection for that criteria. And this continues in this format. It will always be sum first, criteria range, followed by the criteria for that criteria range, and so on and so forth. We're going to type Sumifs, and we're going to use the turnover as our sum. We'll jump into column B for our first criteria, and then the criteria cell reference for blue. Then we're going to do criteria range 2, and then followed by criteria 2, which is cell reference F7. And now what we're going to do is jump into the Sumifs formula. We're going to lock all the ranges using the dollars against all the ranges and none of the criteria references. So we're going to do that so we can drag this formula down and the formula will work. Without the dollar signs, it would move the ranges. Now we're going to replicate this process but actually using words rather than cell references, which I believe is a little bit harder to do. So we're going to repeat the same formula. We're going to add up the turnover in column C, criteria range in B, but now we've done that, we need to type the words. We're going to have to start with the speech marks. I'm going to type the words. We're going to replicate what's above, so we'll type blue, end it with the speech marks and add the comma. Then we'll go into the pen type. Once we've selected pen type, we then now need to type the word ballpoint inside the speech marks. We'll close it off the speech mark, and then we can end that. I feel this takes a little bit longer, plus you've got a chance of spelling stuff wrong. And we're just going to replicate that again. So we're going to do that again for the green ballpoint. We're going to start with turnover, then we're going to follow by the pen colour, and then we're going to type in the colour, which is green, with the speech marks. We're then going to move into the final pen type, which we're going to copy in. We're going to add the comma, put in the speech marks. We're going to type ballpoint, close it off with speech marks, and then with the brackets. There's another way of doing this. What you could do is jump into the formula bar. We could copy the whole formula. We'll take that and paste that in the next cell, and we can go in using F2 or into the formula bar, and we can swap out the colours that we've got here. So we can remove green and swap that for purple. Once you've done that, you don't have to change anything else. My preference is I'd rather use a cell reference, it's so much quicker. We are now on the 3 criteria. So we're going to add in the Sumifs here. We're going to start with column D by adding up the turnover. We're then going to select the first criteria range, which relates to colour. We're going to select that as column C. Then we're going to select the criteria for that column, which is this cell here for blue. We're then going to select the second criteria, which is the pen type, which is column B. Then we're going to select this criteria for criteria 2, which is ballpoint. Then we're going to select criteria 3, which is the date range in column A. Then we're going to add in the comma, the open speech marks, the greater than, close the speech marks, followed by the ampersand and H7 or the date range. We can then close that off with a bracket and press enter. Once we've done that, we can jump into the formula bar. We can start populating with the using the F4 key to put the dollar signs in around all our ranges, and the range in column D, range in column C, column B, and column A. Once we've done that, we can then drag the formula down. We need to remember here not to add any of the dollar signs to the actual criterias, because we need to let them move with the formula. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and see me in the next one.